Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to this Science Business event in partnership with NGen, Next Generation Manufacturing Canada. My name is Antoine Leroux. I'm the Special Advisor Canada for Science Business. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here today for this discussion on the future of manufacturing in Europe and Canada. We will discuss issues related to the post-COVID industrial recovery agenda and cluster-to-cluster industrial partnerships and collaborations across the Atlantic. To do so, I'm very fortunate to have with us today 5 speakers with a great diversity of profiles, background, and based both in Canada and Europe. So just to introduce them very quickly, and they'll get the chance, of course, to say more about who they are and the work that they do. We have Mark Niklas, who's the head of unit Industrial Strategy and Value Chain at DG GROW, European Commission. We're also joined in Brussels by Stéphane Lambert, who is the counselor and head of the Trade, Economic and Science and Technology section at the Canadian Mission to the European Union. From Toronto, we have Cynthia Lavoie, who's the President and Chief Investment Officer of CCRM, the Center for the Commercialization of Regenerative Medicines. And in Europe, we also have Željko Pazin, who's the Managing Director of EFRA, the European Factories of the Future Research Association, and Patricia Tames, who is the Managing Director of the Smart Advanced Manufacturing Cluster in the Eureka Network, and also from the AFM Manufacturing Cluster in Spain, in the Basque Country. So welcome to you all. Before we get started, just a very basic rules in terms of the interaction and your participation. You will get the chance to ask your questions, and we will take as many questions as we can in the discussion. To do so, you only have to use the Q&A box that you have at the right of your screen, and we will take those questions in due time, hopefully as many as we can. Before we enter into the details of the discussion, and in order for us to set the stage, I would like to give the floor for a few minutes and a few words of introductory remarks to Jason Myers. Jay is the CEO of NGen, the Next Generation Manufacturing Canada Supercluster. So Jay, over to you for a few words, and thank you for joining us and for partnering with us on that event.
Thanks very much, Antoine, and good morning, good afternoon, bonjour à toutes et tous. I first of all want to thank Science Business, Antoine, and the team for helping us produce this event today. I think it's a very important discussion that we're launching. We really want to focus on opportunities in advanced manufacturing. I think a number of priorities, innovation priorities that we share, and business opportunities, innovation partnership opportunities that lie ahead. Next Generation Manufacturing Canada is, as Antoine explained, Canada's advanced manufacturing supercluster. We do our mission is to build world-leading advanced manufacturing capabilities in Canada, and we do that partially by raising funds to support very innovative, transformative, collaborative projects that do lead to unique solutions by combining technologies in advanced manufacturing processes to develop new processes or transform existing processes. We have a number of projects ranging from biomanufacturing, and I'm very glad that Cynthia has been able to join us from one of our partner organizations, the Center for Regenerative Medicine in Toronto. Ranging from that to the transformation and digitization of steel production, to the development of new robotics applications in outer space for the new space station that will be orbiting the moon, to the development of new advanced materials. And of course, I think one thing that the past year has told us all is the very important role that advanced manufacturing plays, not only in responding to the pandemic, but also how important advanced manufacturing will be in the economic recovery going forward. So very pleased to be able to launch this discussion. I think we've seen we've learned a lot from our activities over the past year. First of all, how common the challenges are in advanced manufacturing around the world. Certainly, I think many Canadian companies share the same challenges as European counterparts. How common the opportunities are, the fact that you do not build world-leading advanced manufacturing capabilities, one organization, one company at a time. It really is a collaborative effort. And if we are really going to build the best in the world, we need the best of the technology, the best of partners in order to do that. And that's why Canada's relationship with Europe is so important. We've also learned, though, how important it is to be able to prepare the workforce of the future, and particularly not only offer smaller companies an opportunity to work together, but prepare smaller companies to manage a successful deployment of technology going forward. I think this is a challenge that small companies face around the world, but Canadian companies and European small companies face it together. So lots of opportunity to work together. I think the strategic opportunities that Canadian industry sees are very much aligned to many of the same policy objectives, the business objectives that we have in Europe as well. The move to a net zero economy, circular economy, precision agriculture, electric vehicles, autonomous robotics, advanced materials. These are all very much a part of our strategic priorities moving forward in terms of our investment. And I think also opportunities for innovation partnerships. And from a Canadian perspective, how do we leverage our joint access into a broader world market? And from our perspective, the closest large market is the United States. So I think all sorts of opportunities for leveraging up not only innovation capabilities and opportunities for innovation partnerships, but very successful business partnerships as well, and investment partnerships if we combine our strengths and work together. So Antoine, that's again, thank you to you and your team. I hope that this discussion today is just an introduction to a more comprehensive and more a deeper relationship on advanced manufacturing between Canada and Europe.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for this initial words, and I'm sure there's a few things that you've just said that we will probably pick up on in the conversation, because they echo also what I know are some of the concerns of our speakers. So maybe to start with, I think it's always good to have a bit of the broad policy overview. So as you know, we're in a situation where both in Canada and Europe, we're trying to reflect on the so-called Build Back Better agenda, and which includes an industrial agenda, of course, which is centered maybe around green recovery, around sustainability, digital transformations, also strategic thinking and strategic autonomy. So let's start maybe with our both the EU and the Canadian view on that. And so we'll start with Mark Niklas at the European Commission. So maybe just let us know where you are in terms of, so the EU industrial strategy was released last year. It's in the process of being updated. So maybe what are the latest takeaways, and where does the strategy go in that post-COVID context? So if you could start, Mark. Go ahead.
So I had a connection issue. I think I was briefly lost, but thank you, Antoine. And indeed, it was exactly a year ago, basically, when we presented the new industrial strategy for Europe with these clear triple objectives, which are at the core of the Build Back Better agenda in a way. So first, we really wanted to support industry's transition to climate neutrality. As Europe, we want to become climate neutral by 2050. And this, of course, requires a huge change in terms of processes, technologies, business models, also the markets for the sustainable products. And at the same time, we want European industry to shape the digital age, not simply to follow the digitalization, but to actively shape the digital age. And to master this twin transition, as we call it, the digital and the green transition, we want a globally competitive European industry built on a strong single market within Europe, and also avoiding these dependencies. So this is actually when we introduced also the concept of open strategic.
Stefan, maybe over to you for the Canadian side of the story and the post-COVID industrial strategy, and hopefully we can catch up with Mark right after that.
Okay, thank you, Antoine, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. If I could just start with a word of caveat to tell you what we are in the process. The post-COVID industrial strategy is still in the making in Canada. The federal government, as you know, has set up an industrial strategy council led by business leaders, government leaders, academia, who just submitted a report to the government to recommend ways to build back better. The federal government is also in the process of preparing and releasing its budget for 2021, in which it will detail its post-COVID recovery plan, which includes its industrial strategy going forward. And a few of our key provinces also will be watching closely. The largest one, Ontario, Quebec, in British Columbia, would also have actions on the industrial front to watch for. Nonetheless, the fall economic statement was, if you want, the federal government's roadmap, and in which it made down payment on its future recovery plan with key themes. And of course, the federal government opened the current session of the Parliament with a speech from the throne in September, outlining key themes that will guide its recovery plan. So I will go briefly through these key themes, and I hope that you will find real alignment between the EU and Canada on objectives, on policies, and on ambition. And I would invite also our European friends to consider the post-COVID Canadian economy as a place to invest, as a place to do business with, using CETA, our trade agreement, as an asset for the recovery, and to build innovative partnership. So I have placed really the industrial and strategy plan, or the recovery plan, into 5 buckets. So I'll just briefly go through this. The first one is really climate action. And the government took decisive action. Canada took decisive action shortly before Christmas with a legislated framework in which it locked in its ambition to become climate neutral in 2050, and to exceed its target in terms of reducing emission by 2030. And to do this, as part of the plan, you will see that it will take action to deliver more transit options more accessible, to invest in the e-vehicle, to expand the network of charging stations across Canada, to put in place and really it sees as key to its carbon neutral future, building supply chains in e-vehicles and batteries, leveraging Canada's strength in minerals and raw material, in which we're developing a partnership with our European friends, from nickel to copper, that are needed for these clean technologies, combined with Canada's expertise and ecosystem in electric vehicles. The government will also launch new funds to attract investment in making zero-emission products. It really has the ambition to become the most competitive jurisdiction for clean tech companies. It will also review its corporate tax rate to provide incentives. In fact, cut in half the corporate tax rates for companies producing clean technologies. It will also deploy large-scale projects in clean technologies from deploying small modular reactors to deliver clean powers to communities across the country, to the use of hydrogen in vehicles, and also to power clean communities. The second theme and pillar would be infrastructure. And in infrastructure, it launched a very ambitious 3-year plan, which includes investing in building clean energy infrastructure, from energy generation to energy storage to transmission across the country. Digital infrastructure with the goal to deliver high-speed broadband to 98% of the population, and anyone who knows the geography of Canada knows how challenging and ambitious this goal can be, with investments not just in telecom companies, but also aerospace companies, because some of our companies can only be reached through satellite broadband. It has a very ambitious plan on digitalization, with plans to vastly expand e-health across the country and e-government. It will launch a plan similar to the EU's Renovation Wave program to retrofit buildings, government buildings, and households around the country to ensure that they are more energy efficient. And specifically for the food industry, it will invest in vastly enhancing intermodal transportation to make sure that we're set up with a modern economy to be capable to exporting to the world, our bulk communities. Thirdly, it's really on ensuring we have a very powerful and world-class leading innovation ecosystem. To echo what Jason was saying in the introduction, there is no way we will be successful with our climate ambition without also a digital transition, without AI, and without the kind of advanced manufacturing and innovation where we want to be to really power our economy and service our economy. So just to focus maybe and highlight one tool that we have set up before the pandemic, in which we'll continue to invest. This is our super clusters. Can invest in more than $1 billion to deploy on a large scale the kind of partnership that will mobilize the ecosystem around our strengths. We have 5 of them: digital technologies, protein industry, AI, advanced manufacturing, which is NGen, and ocean technologies in the Atlantic provinces. So we'll continue to build on this to ensure that we have really vibrant ecosystem. We'll carefully review and attract foreign direct investment to close the gaps that we have in these ecosystem, which we'll use to scale up our companies and internationalize them. Very briefly on the last 2 pillars, the 4th one is skills and training. And in this, there are 2 components. One, train and retrain the workers that have been affected by the pandemic and did not have the opportunity to keep up. And so we will, the government will invest in paid internship, youth employment, and to make sure and reskilling tools. And the second one is really to build on our global talent strategy. We'll make it easier for businesses to get the workers that they need and tap into global pools by fast-tracking immigration paperwork and visa paperwork. And we will continue using immigration as a source of strength and source of growth. And lastly, because this is a key theme for the Canadian government, diversity, inclusion, reconciliation with First Nation, and combating systemic racism, with the realization that women and Indigenous and the Black community in particular were disproportionately affected through the pandemic. So the government will be launching dedicated programs dedicated funding to support these communities. We'll be launching the first ever Black entrepreneurship program, and we will be using procurement to diversify the supply chains of Canadian companies to make sure that they're integrated and part of the recovery plan.
Thank you, Stefan. Yes, thank you for this initial overview, and again, I'd like to get back a bit later to some of those issues that you've mentioned and see where Europe can fit in some of those. I think, and I hope that Mark Niklas is back with us now. So I'll get back to you for a few more minutes because you were interrupted. So over to you, Mark.
Yes, thank you, Antoine, and apologies for the technical issues. It was very interesting to listen to Stefan about Canada's strategy, because there are indeed many common elements with our European industrial strategy. And as I was saying when I was cut off, the crisis only reinforced our priorities, accelerated the green and the digital transition. And in that context, the recovery plan that we have set up is really about investments into the future of the industry, into this green transition and the digital transition. And the flagship projects that we have proposed are very similar actually to what Canada is doing. So it's things like renewables and clean hydrogen. It's smart charging for sustainable mobility, the renovation wave, connectivity, broadband connectivity, and also the industrial capacities in areas like microprocessors and the industrial cloud, which I think makes the link to this aspect of, again, resilience. As I said already a year ago, strategic autonomy was a part of our industrial strategy. But then, of course, in the COVID-19 crisis, when your supply chains are disrupted, then you think even more about the critical dependencies that we have. And we have that, of course, let's say for very practical things in the health crisis, like face masks or personal protective equipment. But we also had just very recently problems that European car manufacturers have problems in getting the electronic components from East Asia. So those are the things where we need to look at the critical dependencies. But then in this whole context of really making industry greener, making it more digital, making it more resilient, I would also like to highlight the elements that both, I think, Jason at the beginning and also Stefan mentioned, which are the skills of the workforce, and you need the people for this transition, and the green and the digital transition will require different skills in the future than the kind of industrial skills of the past. And it's also important not only to develop the new technologies, the breakthrough technologies for the greening of industry and for the digital transition, but to deploy them, to have the diffusion of these new technologies all across the industrial ecosystems through the SMEs, because this is what in the end drives productivity if you apply these technologies. So this is then again where things like clusters clearly play a role, to have the link then also to the SMEs on the ground, so that all industrial players in the end can benefit from this twin transition. And I was also very happy at the beginning when Jason focused on opportunities, because we just last week actually had the EU Industry Days virtual event organized by us with 6,000 participants. And in spite of the crisis, the focus was really on the opportunities that this twin transition provides for our industry and for the SMEs and for the employees in the end, for our society.
Thank you, Mark. And so now I think we have a bit of the policy overview, the policy agenda on each side, and of course we're fortunate to have three of our speakers that can speak to how industry is reacting to that and moving forward in that context. So this is where I want to turn the light on now, and so maybe starting with the Canadian side this time. So with Cynthia at CCRM. So Well, first, I think it would be useful to remember that you tell us a bit more about the work, of course, that CCRM is doing in cell manufacturing, and maybe also how from your perspective you're reacting to this context where supply chain disruptions, COVID situation, how it impacts maybe your strategic thinking and ways to go forward. So over to you, Cynthia.
So thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to this panel. I really appreciate it. And I've really appreciated hearing Jason, Stefan, and Marc speak to the efforts from government. I am the President and Chief Investment Officer of CCRM Enterprises, which is the for-profit investment arm of CCRM, which, as Antoine mentioned at the beginning, is the Center for Commercialization of Regenerative Medicine. I'm on this panel really as a recipient of the efforts that have been put forward. We were one of the first recipients of an NGen advanced manufacturing supercluster funding and their support with several other organizations, including Cytiva, which was formerly GE Healthcare. We at CCRM, CCRM was founded in 2011 and funded as a not-for-profit organization, funded by the Government of Canada, the Government of Province of Ontario, and several partners, including Cytiva, and leading institutions or research institutions in Toronto. CCRM is a catalyst for the commercialization of technologies in regenerative medicine and cell and gene therapies. So that really fits nicely into our discussion about the biomanufacturing side of the discussion. CCRM has grown dramatically even since we were recipients of the NGen funding and support. Really, the headcount of CCRM has grown from about 40 folks or so and highly skilled personnel when it was first founded to more about 140 individuals now. So we do take the training of highly skilled personnel very seriously. We have trained several individuals who have ended up being part of the startups that are created within Canada, and we continue to support training of these the individuals who work in the biomanufacturing plant or who have that specialized expertise. CCRM provides the infrastructure support, the expertise, the training, of course, and the support and the financing support for the development of nascent companies and the support of currently existing companies in Canada. At CCRM Enterprises, we specifically look to invest in opportunities in the cell and gene therapy space and in technologies that are in regenerative medicine, but also in enabling technologies for biomanufacturing. And we look to make these investments at an early stage and to help drive the financing and the syndication and the interest from our partner financing syndicates. We are an organization that that basically catalyzes this commercialization through those many means. CCRM is an organization that is located in downtown Toronto. We have a 40,000 square foot facility that includes 20,000 square feet of good manufacturing practice, the facility that's a GMP facility. We also have 10,000 square feet of rooms that are used for process development. So really at those early stages of scaling up manufacturing. We have, we work on several technologies, including ones that you may hear about, viral vectors that are used in manufacturing, cell therapies that are used to treat cancer patients, as well as other types of technologies that are in the advanced therapy space. Now, when you spoke to the type of situation that happened in the last year, I think it does make us think a little bit about what some have called, and I think the Europeans have defined it best as strategic autonomy, or open strategic autonomy, maybe, where we think about the need for creating and supporting the growth of a nascent and domestic biomanufacturing capability. And that's what certainly the support of NGen for CCRM has helped us do. The thing about biomanufacturing of these cell and gene therapies is, one, they're very complex technologies, and so this provides having them manufactured within the country allows access to these, but also specifically the cell therapies, there's a need for local delivery of these technologies. And so that is a very important piece as well. And so that does underlie the need to support this for situations in which there's a domestic need for these complex technologies and access to these complex technologies. And so I did want to talk about that piece. I want to maybe, as we go forward with the discussion, talk a little bit about bio specifically, because I think there are a lot of industries that are represented around this panel. But as many of you may have noticed, it's been a stellar year for biotech, and more specifically, actually, for regenerative medicine. Even though it's been a difficult year with respect to the pandemic, and the financing is really at a peak of financing and support of companies in biotech, and so it's really been a part of the economy that's been driven a little bit, probably due to the fact that there's been attention paid to the health of the population and to the importance of the life sciences and the importance of access to these technologies, which was made so evident by the new technologies, as if I may say it, even though they're not that new, but new around the production of vaccines for treatment of COVID. And so I think maybe I'll stop there, Antoine, and we can come back to some of the themes that you had mentioned before.
Thank you, Tintiana. I guess it's reassuring to everyone to hear some positive stories of the past year in terms of business generation and opportunities. So going back to the word opportunities that we heard also at the beginning, also in the words of Jason. I want to hear now maybe from Patricia Tames and the Smart AM cluster at Eureka, because well, of course, when we think again about the current situation, and one of those types of companies that have faced the harshest realities are SMEs. Also, SMEs are the core of what the Eureka network is about, and of course also the core of your own manufacturing cluster in Spain. So I'm curious to have your views as well on the current situation, the challenges and the ways out, of course, of the current situation in terms of building back better in the advanced manufacturing sector.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much for letting me have the opportunity to stay here in this workshop, because I am even learning a lot from the other people speaking, and I think that is a good starting point for future cooperations. Well, I represent the SMART cluster in the Eureka world, in the Eureka ecosystem. The SMART cluster, I will introduce you just a little, just some words on it. It was launched, it's the youngest cluster in the Eureka world. It was launched in 2016, 17, and it was a private initiative. We launched because there were some companies that we wanted to have international cooperation in R&D, but we found that it had to be easy, close to market cooperation, and easy to handle and we thought we were looking for different instruments, because we need instruments, financing instruments to launch this initiative. And finally, we decided to launch this cluster, this Eureka cluster. Till the moment, we have already launched 4 calls. And Canada has already participated in 3 of the 4 calls, so at least it's known, and well, we are trying to work together. I think it's 5 projects already running with the participation of Canadian together with European companies. So well, it's a starting point, and we want to continue on this line. Why did we launch this cluster? Because the manufacturing industry is compounded by SMEs, is spread out. There are not big players. Well, there are some big players, of course, but most of the companies are SMEs with little capacities to go into cooperation R&D projects, cooperative R&D projects. We need, well, our companies, they export more than 80% of what they produce. And these companies integrate a lot of technologies, advanced technologies. So cooperation is a must. And it's a must not only locally, but also at an international level, as I said. So, well, Eureka is an easygoing way of financing projects because you have to deal with your national government, and at the same time, you try to get in touch with international companies. So it's a mix of national, international funding process, which is easy for the companies. We are working on certain technological domains such as advanced manufacturing processes, intelligent and adaptive manufacturing systems, digital, virtual and efficient companies, person-machine cooperation, and sustainable manufacturing. So our technological domains are very much related to the manufacturing, the company, the factory, the equipments, the processes, the people working in the company, and all sustainable related issues. Concerning the last year's situation and the need to work on this initiative, I think that we have found that we have to strengthen these initiatives. COVID has shown us that there is a need, and we have to work faster and even deeply on these kind of initiatives. Why? We have to keep our workforce. We need talent, and we need to keep our companies working very actively. We need to be more competitive. We need to be faster. We need to be more digitalized. We cannot travel, and we cannot travel, we cannot sell. We cannot sell, I cannot take care of my customers. So technology is a clear example of what we need, is an enabling issue that we have to integrate quickly in our factories. So we need more active R&D projects close to the market, and trying to take into consideration our customers, our suppliers, the R&D research institutes, academia, and startups. We are working now very actively with the startups ecosystem because they are giving us a lot of solutions that we have to integrate into our factories. So this is our situation. This is what we want to promote. And this is where we find that there is a way. There are many ways or many ways of addressing these handicaps, but I think that this is a good one. So we are open to cooperation, and we want to go on these issues.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Patricia. So I think it goes back a little bit also to the skills and retraining issues that both Stefan and Mark were mentioning. So maybe we'll get back to this in a minute. So to close this first round, over now to Željko Pazin, so Managing Director of EFRA. I wanted to finish with you because you have kind of, EFRA is working across sectors, right? So, we've heard, for example, from biotech and medicines, but in your case, you have this like cross-sectoral view and perspective on innovation in long-term manufacturing as part of your mandate and mission. So I was curious to ask you about, what do you see as the main challenges so far, the main opportunities, if you think about, this innovation in long-term manufacturing, what kind of a picture can you maybe give us so that we can start working on what's next, I would say.
Thank you very much, Antoine, for the invitation to join this panel. As Patricia also said, I learned also a lot. I also see a lot of similarities of what's going on in Europe and what's going on in Canada. And as you already said, Antoine, so I work for EFRA. It's an association here in Europe. In the end, we are engaged with the European Commission to implement a program which is similar to the superclusters in Canada. So EFRA brings together manufacturing companies, research institutes, universities, national and regional clusters. So it's a big and rich manufacturing community. We are not subsidized by the governments, it's privately financed. But of course, the role is to cooperate with the European Union to implement these manufacturing programs, which are pre-competitive, and it's all about cooperation. And it was very interesting to hear the other speakers, because I think that's what we are all interested in. Because of course, the classical game of a company is you fight, you try to survive on the market. Maybe you cooperate on research with a university that is close to your region or an institute. And of course, luckily over the years, all these instruments that we have allowed us to leave the region. So not that you only cooperate with the university where your stuff is coming from, but to look cross-border, to go beyond, and then to see this great world that other nations, other institutes and universities have great ideas. And there's this hunger to learn, to compete also with each other. And I think all these initiatives that I heard so far, that's what they have in common. It's a willingness to cooperate. It's institute and companies who don't want to be in their corner and think they are the best, but they know that other people have something interesting to offer, and it's about exchanging and cooperating. And so in our case, we are doing this since 12 years now, working, as I said, with the European Commission to basically to improve the offer of the governments, how to spend this valuable tax money that is there. Only a small part of this tax money goes into pre-competitive research to support manufacturing industries, not single companies, as I said, but more networks, ecosystems, and this works quite well. It's so far a great success. More than 300 projects were launched so far. All of these projects are truly European, some of them also international, in the sense that Canadian organization joins or from other corners of the world. Of course, it's also a kind of a tricky situation since it's competitive. I mean, we are all competitors, so there is also you know, always the question, what can you share and what can you not share? And it's this gray zone that case by case the consortia need to kind of develop. But on many topics, there is a lot of willingness to share, because the challenges are the same, to get greener, to get more digital. And since the manufacturing sector is so broad, it also allows that different companies get together which are not working in the same market segment and are competitors. So it's a lot about technology transfer. So what works in the automotive industry can be interesting for the aerospace industry, for the food processing industry. And that's in this sense, it's about technology transfer, what works in one sector to bring it to the other. And well, over the year, I mean, I think Mark very well explained it, and the previous speakers, there are these challenges which are there, which over the years got more evident because of society, because of nature. We see the limits. So certainly the green dimension, in a way, it was always there, but it's just more important now than it was 20 years ago. And also, if you look at the digital angle, I mean, automation and software tools and simulation, you know, before you do physical products, that you first simulate them in the computer. We have experience with this since 30 years or something. It's just the pace, it's accelerating faster. The computer capacities are growing exponentially. So it's just faster, better, and more modern. And yeah, I think we all want to kind of embrace this. It's about experimenting. It's about doing demonstrators to show what is now possible. And I think this, that's why all these programs are called research, demonstration, and innovation. You need to develop it, but you need to show it. I mean, only if people trust in these new technologies, they are ready to change something in their production line. They will not play around and put something into a system that, was a nice presentation and then let's see if it works or not. In this sense, companies are conservative because they need to be conservative. If you produce a car or an airplane, you cannot play around with things, and hence you need to test, demonstrate. It needs to be challenged, and that's what it is about. So yeah, I find it very interesting what Jason, what Stefan before said, and Cynthia. I'm sure that this will lead to more cooperation. As I said, I think it's a bit learning from each other. Yeah, of course, we are looking at the superclusters. They looked at us, what we are doing, and then also comparing things, seeing also a bit the differences. We have this also within Europe. Some countries are more specialized in automotive industry, some in aerospace, some in food processing, and I think also Canada has such a broad economy that you cover many different sectors. You are neither specialized just on one thing, and that's why I think this cooperation can be very helpful, and there's interest on both sides in it.
So I want to pick up on what you just said. So there's many sectors, many areas, and so now we've painted the broad picture. If I also go back to what Stefan was originally saying, in those like 4 or 5 priority domains, there's actually a lot going on the Canadian side. So if we were to focus on maybe 2, 3 key priorities or sectors or areas when it comes to specifically Canada and Europe working together, what would those be? Maybe I can go back to Stefan first, since you've introduced a lot of those issues. If we're to pick and choose, what should be the focus maybe?
It's a tricky question in the sense that I think the way I see my role is really to create the enabling environment and the platforms for businesses and researchers to make these decisions. But we clearly see alignment, and there are many of tools that we can mobilize. And of course, we have discussions amongst ourselves, have discussions with colleagues at DigiPro to discuss the types of tools and the priority areas where we want to focus to invite our researchers or companies. So let me just mention a couple. Since I see in the background of Pazin a poster on Horizon Europe, I think Horizon Europe would be a key platform that we want to prioritize to work on the upstream of the future. So the foundation of the hydrogen economy, for example, to make our companies and cities more climate resilient. And we have a couple of activities in the work. We have a workshop coming up on AI, where we want to twin our researchers and our companies to work on projects. We want to work also on the enabling environment around e-health. And we have many discussions with the Europeans now on health ID and digital ID. That is kind of a foundation for all of that. We have the Eureka platform. We have mission innovation that we can mobilize to work on clean technologies. And of course, we have CETA. And CETA does not only create like all of the competition, like Patricia talked about the need to be more competitive in the global marketplace. CETA is making a lot of our new technologies very competitive into each other's marketplace. And it allows us to build stuff together much more easily. And it is very remarkable that pre-COVID, for example, areas of growth were in advanced manufacturing, machinery, clean technologies, like double-digit growth in trade in clean technologies, and that's only in products, not environmental services, which I would say is an area that will be there to grow because we're much more effective when we do stuff together. And under CETA, we have also channels in which we can build to organize things together. As an example, Environment and Climate Change Canada, together with colleagues in the Commission, DG Envy, are organizing a clean tech workshop, I believe in Vancouver in late March, where they will bring together, it involves B2G, but also B2B, businesses selected based on their profile that are interested in partnering, in developing innovation partnership to develop clean technologies. They've done this prior to COVID. It was usually successful. They're going to repeat, and then we will work together with the EU on a clean tech summit to take place later this year. So clean tech is one area, but really the opportunities are plentiful, from AI, from e-health. I think Jason mentioned precision agriculture. I believe in this, we really have a competitive edge in using AI to service agriculture, using drones also to produce more effectively and to reduce the use of pesticides. It's a hugely important area of work for the Europeans. So I believe there are some, I can see some really interesting partnerships developing.
So I want to challenge you a little bit on some of that, and I will use that as a reminder also to our audience that you can ask a question that actually we have a question that I want to take, and that goes back to what some of you were talking about, which has to do with this open strategic autonomy, right? So because of course we're here in the rationale for our event today is to discuss cross-Atlantic collaborations, and yet at the same time, we keep talking about how we're trying to develop a manufacturing sector that is maybe, of course, not self-sufficient, but that can sustain itself to some extent, both in Canada and in Europe. We have a question from the audience that asks, so whether and to what extent this, the technology sector in EU-Canada relations is also subject to unfair competition, in particular from China. China is, of course, the big elephant in the room when we're talking about strategic autonomy, whether it's slightly more or less open when it comes to also cooperations with China. So what is, and it's not a question to you, Stéphane, in particular, but to all of our guests, right? So what is your take on that? So how do we make that work, right? Open strategic autonomy, but at the same time, of course, competition coming from the US, from China. Can it really work to say we're going to work more closely together, us Canadians and Europeans, while at the same time being more autonomous? How do we try and solve the tension there? Who wants to jump on this one first?
Can I say just two things quickly, maybe on this one? I think it has two elements. The first is to ensure we have some domestic capacity, and I think this is also a priority for the EU in critical sectors. It's also a priority for Canada, especially in the biohealth manufacturing sector. That's a realization after the pandemics that we do need indigenous capacity in some sectors, so that we are more resilient to face future shocks. The second one, and it goes to the open strategic autonomy. To build resiliency doesn't mean we have to build everything ourselves. It means we can't rely just on a single supplier. I think the big risk, and we saw it during the pandemic, is when you rely on a single supplier and then you see border restrictions, or that supplier simply cannot scale up enough quickly to face a shock that we all experience. This is risky for everybody in the system. So it means also diversifying our trade and building a little bit more redundancy, sort of building a just in case production framework rather than a just-in-time. And so I think this is done through looking at leveraging our trade agreements in integrated framework, and looking also at building a diversity of suppliers in our supply chain.
So I see that some of our other speakers were actually nodding to what you were saying. So anyone else wants to jump in on that one?
I can.
Antoine, sorry, Cynthia, go ahead.
Cynthia, go ahead.
Well, Jason, I was actually going to harken back to what you'd said in the beginning about there being a need for the best of tech and the best of partners. I think that's an important part. What we work in the biomanufacturing space and in other of these fields that have been mentioned is very complex and technically complex, and there's a need to access the best technologies, and that's why the partnerships with Europe are so important. We at CCRM have several partnerships with Europe, with other centers for regenerative medicine or biomanufacturing across Europe, in Sweden, in the Netherlands. And we've also have a partnership with the Catapult in the UK, which is a similar organization to ours. So these are very important partnerships. There's also an access to the specialized skills, the contract research organizations. And there's really a strength in Europe, in Germany, and in the Netherlands, and in other countries in Europe, in that services area where research is research. We need experts in clinical development. We need experts in preclinical. We need experts in biomanufacturing. And so all of those we can access. And I think to Stefan's point, I really like the just in case comment that you made, because I think that's quite important as well. When you build towards creating an industry, you really need all of the pieces, and then you need more than one opportunities to access those technologies along the way.
Jay, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I had promised Antoine I wasn't going to intervene, but I need to jump in here as well, and really to build on what Stefan and Cynthia have said. It is about building. If we're going to compete with the best of the world, then we need to be able to develop best-in-class manufacturing processes here, and that does take the best of the technology that goes into that. And so this is very much our strategy in terms of being able to integrate world-leading technologies and Canadian technologies in our case into world-leading solutions here, and it's the solution that is important. And in fact, I think all of our experience in manufacturing shows that it's really the application, the development of the unique solution that is important here. It's not, I don't know very many companies that buy technologies. I know a lot of companies that need a solution, and some of the problems that companies face is how to source that solution, how to source the types of technologies that really work. And I think this goes to an issue that we're all focusing on, which is around skills, but it's also around business leadership, business management, and particularly the ability of smaller companies to actually deploy technologies to meet their business objectives, to actually be able to compete. And in many cases, it's not a technology issue. It's an issue about having the right efficient processes in place, knowing how to position yourself in the market, knowing how to create the value proposition for your customer or your customer's customer, and then making sure you have the business requirements, the skills requirements in order to deliver that. So we do a lot of, we've been discussing opportunities for technology partnerships and innovation partnerships, and I think that's very important. But I think there are huge opportunities that lie ahead here too, just in the learning from each other, the exchange of best practices. And in many cases, it's not best practices, it's learning from some of the challenges that other companies have run into here as well. So there are many opportunities, I think, here that go beyond just the technology opportunities that we've been talking about. But totally agree with what Cynthia says. It's about building. If we're going to build world-leading capabilities, then we need to bring together the companies that can deliver those in terms of both technology, but also in terms of good business management.
Mark, I think you wanted to jump in as well, so I had you wait for a bit.
But just to echo fully what Stefan said, and when we talk about strategic autonomy in an open economy, it is really not about self-sufficiency. It's about avoiding dependencies. And that requires then building strategic capacities in certain areas. But the basic principle is the openness and cooperation. And our Executive Vice President Dombrovskis just said last week, we will work multilaterally when we can and autonomously when we must. So the basic principle is really the openness and cooperation. And I believe cooperation with like-minded countries, like-minded partners, can also help us to increase the resilience and fill these gaps to avoid such unsustainable situations that you depend on a single supplier.
Thank you, Mark. And so maybe over to going back also to Željko and Patricia. I know so that some of you, Stefan, for example, mentioned the role of Eureka, and so I want to have the feedback from Patricia on that in terms of leveraging maybe additional collaborations between Canada and Europe. Also, of course, how we move from initial research to commercialization, so up the scales of TRLs, and here maybe Željko would have to add something. So Patricia, maybe on Eureka and how to leverage additional collaborations between Canadians and Europeans, a quick reaction maybe.
Yeah, I wanted to just to give a short message, a positive and a warning message. I want to give a positive message in terms that we have a wonderful basic knowledge on manufacturing and on metalworking processes in Europe, and I guess that in Canada also. And I would like to give a warning not to lose it, because those countries that lost the manufacturing basic industry have not been able to recover it, even with a lot of money. There have been policies on reshoring, on bringing back the manufacturing to the country, and they have not worked. So I would like to make a call on let's keep and promote our knowledge, because we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience on manufacturing. So I think that we have to take care of this industry and try to promote the competitiveness of this industry. So this is one message that I would like to put on the floor. And yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, and I just wanted to give just two keys or two simple messages also in order to make it possible to cooperate. I think that the first thing we need is to know each other. I mean, it's basic, but we have to know what kind of capabilities we have, who is doing what, and for what, and what kind of solutions each little company or big company can give to the industrial ecosystem. So I think that's one area we could work on. And then put easy cooperating instruments on the table to allow companies to start working, but we have to know each other first. That's the first step we have to work on.
So thank you for these words, and going back to the warnings that you were giving. I think it's a good point and a good lesson when we think about skilling and reskilling, which is also about safeguarding what we have in the sectors that we work on already. I'll take some more questions that are coming in a minute. I just want to give the chance to Željko to maybe react also to the discussion on leveraging corporations or on open strategic autonomy. So the floor is yours, Željko.
Okay, Thank you very much, Antoine. Well, I can echo what most of the other speakers said. I fully agree with Stefan. You know, we need to provide the framework. Luckily we live in a market, in an open market economy. It's the market forces, the society that decide where this direction is going. I mean, if you take the electric vehicle as an example, I'm going since 20 years to conferences about batteries and electric vehicle. And, you know, everybody was asking themselves, you know, it's all there, when will it pick off? And you know, it's also a question of timing, of society, when a certain technology is ready. This was there, but, you know, somehow 10 years ago, it was not the right moment to really to do an upscale. And what happened in the last 18 months, you know, it's for the first time you see it in the market figures that the newly registered cars, that it's not only 1% electric vehicle. Now it's, I think we are at 10%, you know. So it's also a lot about timing and some things that you cannot plan. And that's why you cannot pick the winners and say, this will be next year the big thing, or this one. It depends on technology, how technology develops, how affordable it is, you know. I mean, everything what we now do with IoT, this is thanks to, you can install cameras, sensors, all this is now available, it's affordable. This was there also 20 years ago, but it was just too expensive to use it in the sense that we use it today, you know. And about strategic autonomy, I think it was good to have this awakening that we need to be careful. I mean, Brexit was the same. I mean, everybody, when this Brexit talk started here in Europe, you know, everybody started to check, well, you know, what would happen if, and do I have a second, third supplier somewhere else? So I think it's good to be aware of. I think we shouldn't get paranoid about it. I think it's good to talk about it and to identify where are the bottlenecks. And, you know, 30 years ago, it was the oil we depended on, and now it's maybe the data infrastructure and other things that becomes evident that you cannot do it at the moment in Europe, and you need to go to some other companies, maybe in the US or somewhere else, and it's just logical to develop there something that you don't, you know, depend on one supplier. So I think it's good what's happening, and so I think it's also about the skills. You know, often we think about raw materials and electronics from Japan, but I think Jason said it before. It's also about people. You know, I mean, if our best brains are going to Silicon Valley, then something is wrong. That you need to offer something here in Europe to them, be it childcare or a pension plan, or I don't know. Tell them, look, you can work whenever you want, and you take a sabbatical whenever you want. You need to offer something to the youngsters that it's attractive enough to compete with other parts of the world.
And actually, so there it goes. One remark or question that we had from the audience, which is about retaining, you know, the highly skilled workforce and making sure that those talents stay, you know, whether it's in Canada or Europe. We have a few minutes left, and of course, it's always the moment where all of the questions from the floor come in. So I'll take one. Stefan, you've mentioned Horizon Europe at some point, so you've kind of opened the door to a question from our audience, which has to do with association to Horizon. To what extent would it make collaborations in, you know, R&D, manufacturing R&D easier? Like maybe envisioning association, some form of association of Canada to Horizon Europe programs.
That's a good question. Before I answer this question, I'd just like to say that we have an excellent collaboration with the EU. We had a very, very good, excellent under Horizon 2020, which is the predecessor of Horizon Europe. And our participation, I mean, our collaboration on science, R&D, innovation goes back to 20, 30 years ago, but it's been steadily increasing. And on Horizon 2020, I think we we co-delivered over 200 or 350 projects involving over 400 researchers and SMEs. And that's pretty amazing. And in fact, projects that included Canadian participation had a higher success rate than average, a testimony that we're stronger together. So that's a key message. I think we're very keen to look at ways in which we could do more together under Horizon Europe. We're currently looking at every modalities and options, and we're in discussion with the EU over how this could be structured, whether it's through the current way of collaborating through the first tranche of Horizon Europe, or if there's a more structured way, including potentially association. But right now, there hasn't been formal discussion in a decision taken.
Mm-hmm. So we have 5 minutes to go. So I want to make sure that I get a chance to each and every one of you for a last round of comments. And I think because of also the direction that the discussions has been going, it would be nice to have maybe a final takeaway, maybe recommendation, advice from each of you on where to go next in terms of increasing those cross-Atlantic industry collaborations, especially maybe at cluster to cluster level. Actually, someone in the audience mentioned that there's something like the Mission Innovation, which is a multinational instrument that encourages Canada-EU collaboration and joint commitments. And one example that was given by our audience participant is Materials for Energy, which is one of those. So we do have some of those examples that exist already, but how do we do more of that? So maybe I'll just ask each and every one of you for a 1 minute set of comments and reactions on that. Let's start with maybe with Mark. We'll go in the original order that we had. So Mark, you go first.
Yes, well, mission innovation is clearly going beyond the bilateral relations, but clearly one area where we can cooperate closely on areas such as clean hydrogen, with Stefan also mentioned, and other areas for the green transition. But of course, we can also establish bilateral cooperations in these areas. And then as both Canada and the EU have this approach towards clusters, of course, we have an EU-Canada cluster cooperation. Of course, a pandemic is not facilitating, let's say, establishing new contacts between clusters, but nevertheless, we plan a cluster matchmaking event between the EU and Canada later this year. Okay.
Cynthia, maybe over to you. Of course, in your case, with a focus on biotech and cell medicines that you're working on, any advice or takeaways on where to go next?
Well, I think the important thing in our field is that we already collaborate internationally. We have no choice but to. And so maybe what we can get more information on is, this sort of cluster matchmaking that you were referring to, or where we have already identified potential collaborations, and how do we together make those happen through financing and funding from, for example, CCRM or any organization like ours, and combined with government support to make that happen. So I think that's an interesting piece from a specific field, but given one, I think it's not dissimilar to most other industries that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Stefan, a word on cluster matchmaking or anything else that you think should be flagged for looking into the future?
Well, I would say if you're a European business right now and you're looking for investment opportunities in Canada, including Canada's clusters, I would invite you to contact us and we could forward the information. We also have an office that specializes in providing white glove investment services to prospective investors, and we could discuss opportunities for you in terms of a greenfield investment or an expansion into Canada. And of course, I know that that Jason Myers will be more than pleased to discuss opportunities within the advanced manufacturing ecosystem if you're in that field right now. If you're a Canadian business, I would say position yourself on the EU market to take advantage of the rebound opportunities, because they will come quickly, and they will come plenty. And some of the the framework that Mark has discussed and outlined has a significant amount of money attached to it at the EU level and at member state level. Once this trickles down, it will create a vast pool. It will leverage private investment, and it will trigger really a need. And you'll see many European companies in the lookout for solutions. And so it's the time now to position yourself as a solution provider. Take advantage of some of the digital or the trade fairs that are happening virtually. The next one, I think, in Engen is organizing a Canadian booth at the Hanover HESA, and I think that would be a good opportunity to take advantage of the time now to position yourself for recovery.
Thank you, Stéphane. Patricia, you first, and then Željko for a 30-second closing. Patricia.
Well, I will say that we have a big experience in cluster cooperation, and I will say that as far as cooperation is in the same value chain, it's always a success. So we can start over there. Let's show up our capabilities, and we can start working within the framework of clusters, and well, we can do many things in the future.
Thank you. Željko?
Okay, well, I mean, I'm very positive for the future. You know, Canadians have a very good image in Europe, and we don't have a problem with the language. You speak either English or French. So, and I know that there are a lot of exchange programs. I think all these Erasmus and other programs are very important. It's an investment for the future. You know, if you visited Canada with 16 years old, it's later then to establish contacts and do business there. So I'm very grateful that we established all these cooperation schemes, and we share the same values. And I think, yeah, I'm very positive that all this, that there is, I think there's interest on both sides.
So a lot of optimism and positive words to finish the discussion. So so our time is up. I want, of course, thank you all very much for joining the discussion today. Very interesting and refreshing, also with a lot of nice and optimistic words that are good to hear. Just a note to say that the recording of the webinar will be posted on the Science Business website after the event, so there's always an opportunity for rewatch. And we will also publish probably in a week from now a news story to summarize some of the elements of the discussions today. So stay tuned. Don't hesitate to join the newsletter if you want to be kept updated of what's coming up. And thank you all again for joining us from Canada, from Europe, and elsewhere. Have a good rest of the day or evening.